And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here, and today we're going to check out a really large board game, as you might be able to see. We're going to check out Chaostle. This is a roll and move type of game with a little bit of a Dungeons and Dragons type of aspect, in which players are trying to get from their starting position around to the other side of the board, up into the center, and defeat the castle before anyone else. So, why don't we take a look at what's inside this box, which is a lot, how the game plays, and what my thoughts are on the game as a whole. So the first thing I really wanted to comment on, because I saw it and I loved it, was the insert for this box. It's very well made. It holds all of the pieces. I actually thought it was going to be hard to figure out how the pieces went back into the box, but it's not. It has its special segments for each type of piece. They fit in snug. They don't move around. And it even has spots designed for holding the different character sheets, for holding, even more character sheets, some smaller pieces here in the back, and then it also fits all of the little rubber inserts and figures that you get with the game pretty well. On top of that, the game board, which sits right on top of all of that very neatly, when all the pieces are in there properly, sits right here and holds everything down in place. So, now that we've taken a look at that insert, let's continue on and see how the game actually plays itself. So here you see some of the figures that you get with Chaostle. And there's more than this. There's actually 16 figures, but this is 8 of them. And one of the interesting things about this is that all of the figures come with these, well, the game comes with these little removable bases. They're just rubber, but they slide right onto these figures, so any player can play any of the figures. And each of these figures represents a character that's going to be in this castle, fighting to get to the center in order to win the game. And so each player, in fewer player games, each player will have 4 characters, but in an 8-player game, this game plays anywhere from 2 to 8 players. Each character, or each player, can only have 2 characters. And generally the goal is to get your character around the board and enter into the center of the castle. So now that we've looked at some of these minis, we have a dragon and a unicorn, all kinds of cool stuff. We have a minotaur. So now that we've looked at some of these characters, why don't we look at the rest of the board? So here we have the rest of the board for Chaostle, and the first thing you'll notice is it has this nice 3-dimensional terrain. And these pieces are made of plastic. You can see them here, and on the bottom they have tiny little feet. I don't know if it's going to be able to be seen there, but they have these tiny little feet. And the feet fit securely into little notches on the board, so that if you bump these pieces, they're not going to go anywhere, at least not easily. I can hit it pretty hard and it goes somewhere, but just from tapping, it's not going to move around. Now, the rest of what you see on this board is some tracks around the board. You'll notice there's a cobblestone path that goes all the way around the board. And the objective of this game is to get your character, so let's say I'm yellow and I'm the dragon, to get one of your characters all the way around the board and up this staircase, which is right next to your starting spot. Now the trick is, you can't go this direction. You can never cross over the line of your own color. So you're going to need to move around this board, either around this cobblestone path, or you can go up and you can kind of jump across to go a little faster and get to the other side. The trick is that your opponents are going to be trying to kill you in order to stop you from doing this. And so if you get within a certain range of them, you may have to fight. Movement on your turn is going to be via die, and so you're going to roll a die, and depending on the result, you're going to get to do certain things. So if you roll a 1 or a 2, you're either allowed to move one of your characters on the board 1 or 2 spaces, or you may bring a new character in as long as your starting space is unoccupied. So right now if I rolled a 1 or a 2 as yellow, I'd have to move this dragon, but if he had already moved, I could bring another yellow character in. Let's say yellow also had the skeleton archer, and he could come in right there. If I roll a 3, this is called a lucky 3. And lucky 3 is going to let me roll again. So first I would move 3 and then I could roll again. 4 is called optional 4. You don't have to use this. Every other die you must use. A 4 does not have to be used, but most of the time you're probably going to use it. 5s are going to be called fate 5s, and this could be either a good or a bad thing for you. First, you get to move 5 spaces, but then a red die is going to get rolled. And the roll of this red die is going to determine what your fate is. So if we roll it, and let's say we get a 3, 1 through 3 would be good fates, and you'd actually have a chart of fates, so this would be a happiness fate. which would be on this chart here. And then you would roll 2d6, and you'd roll them and you get a total. So my total's 6. And I rolled a 3. So I'd look at the 3 column, and I'd look at number 6, and I'd see that that's fortune. And you'd have to reference this in the rulebook to find out what it does, but it's going to be something good for the character that moved. Alternatively, if you roll a 4, 5, or 6 with the red die, you're going to be on the doom track, and you'll roll those same 2d6 and reference whatever it gives you, and something bad will happen. And so, these are oftentimes very, very bad. When you've moved, if you're within range of another character, so let's say Orange had somehow managed to get over to here, and the dragon was here, you have the option of starting a fight as long as you have one weapon that can hit that character. So if we look at the dragon, let's say the dragon just now moved within range of that knight there, the dragon's going to have a character sheet. And so this is what character sheets look like. There's a lot of information on them. So here you'll see the health, the movement, and the armor points of the dragon. Over here you'll see special abilities, which they suggest you don't use at the beginning of the game, with good reason, because there is a lot of them. And remembering what they all do is difficult, but it really does add quite a bit to the game. Down here, as I mentioned, you'll see all of your weapons. And there's going to be 6 weapons for each player, or for each character. And the reason there's 6 is because you roll a d6 to determine what weapon you use. So, for example, I'd take my d6, and let's say I rolled a 4, okay? 4, for this case, is going to be fire breath, or lava breath, they call it. And it's going to have a range on it. Its range is actually 0. So I wouldn't be able to hit this knight with lava breath. But if I use something else the range of 2, since he is 1, 2 squares away, say for example I rolled a 2, I could use smoke inhalation. That can hit from 2 squares away. And it would show you how much damage it does next to it. So it does 12 damage at a range of 2. And so whoever I'm hitting may have armor, and their armor may reduce that damage, but for the most part that's how you're going to do combat. And if you hit, then your opponent has a chance to swing back using their weapons, and they would roll a die and determine what their weapon is and if they hit, and assign damage. Now, if one player misses, let's say the dragon rolls that 4 that I showed you before, he is going to miss. And at that point, the opposing player has the choice of ending the battle. If they end the battle, it stops right there. Nobody takes any more damage, and essentially you move to the next player's turn. If you manage to defeat one of the players, so let's say this character's hit points were all exhausted, each character has health, let's say the dragon has 40, but let's just, for example, say this guy has 30 and he takes 30 damage. He would die and he'd be moved back to his starting position. And at that point, a character would have a chance to upgrade. And so upgrading is going to be done by placing pegs in these little areas here. So he has a chance to upgrade anything on his board. And what he's going to do, let's say he wants to upgrade his health. He'd do so by taking one of these little gold pegs. They're very tiny, but they're useful. And he would place it in the peg for health on the dragon. So you can see here there's now a peg in health. And that means the dragon now has 44 starting health. If he'd taken damage, he would just go up by 4 hit points, but if he hadn't, he'd now have 44 hit points. You could choose to upgrade any of these things, so he could upgrade his skills, or he could upgrade his weapons to do more damage. He could upgrade them to have a greater range so that he may not miss on that fire breath next time. But essentially, that's how you're going to upgrade your skills, is by killing other players' characters. At the bottom of this track here, you can see a spot for keeping track of how many hit points you currently have, and additionally, you're going to see things about starting positions. Now, this game kind of has a save feature, and if I were this dragon, I have to go this way around the board. If I were to cross a player's line, it would be the second player's line, so I need to cross the staircase. My new starting position would be at Blue's starting spot here, and I would mark that by putting an upgrade marker in the starting position spot of my board. So now I start at position 2. And you'll see that there are 4 new starting positions as you pass these staircases. So there's starting position 1, 2, 3, and 4 for the yellow player. The whole objective is to get your creature all the way around this board, up the staircase where they started, and onto this central area. And when you do so, you're going to have to defeat the castle. So there may be several players up on this central area trying to defeat the castle. And the castle is in the form of a card that has, they suggest, 100 hit points. So you see the castle here, and it has 100 hit points. And you're going to have to roll against it every turn. You're always going to hit because the fights are always at a range of 0, but the whole objective is to get it down to 0 hit points, and when you do so, you simply move your character in the center. The first player to get the predetermined amount of characters in the center is going to win the game, and really, that's all there is to it. So, if you're playing, they suggest that you get 1 character into the center, you're the winner. You're going to be trying to stop other players from doing that, and once somebody makes it, the game ends. So that's Chaostle, and to be honest, it's definitely a roll and move game, but it's a roll and move game that's got something to it that I enjoy. Now, other reviewers that I've talked to have said that they thought this game was a big disappointment, and I think maybe they were expecting too much out of it. I went into this knowing that it was a simple roll and move game with a combat aspect, and for that, I definitely got what I expected. There's a level of complexity involved. It's not very complex, but if you add in those skills that you have, there's remembering to use them, there's using them at the right time, and simply just, playing as best as you can. Now, it's very random, I give it that, but so are all mini games. It's got minis, it's a dungeon diving game, kind of, but really this boils down the complex system of miniatures games into a single die roll. So you roll 1 die, you know what weapon you're getting, how much damage it does, what its range is, and all of that combined into one. It's not going to satisfy the huge minis players' itch to get a minis game down, but for kids or just for somebody, for example, like my girlfriend who's looking for a simple miniatures type game because she enjoys that but doesn't want to have to learn all of the rules, this definitely is something that's interesting. Now, we've played with 2 players. It's pretty straightforward. You roll, you move, you fight, and when you get to the center you win, but I'd imagine with 8 players this game could be very chaotic and could probably take quite a while to complete, but would be a great deal of fun.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.